I didn't plan to walk in late. But the second I stepped into that church, everything stopped. People turned, some gasped, some whispered. Others just stared like they were seeing a ghost. I hadn't seen most of them in over 10 years, but they knew exactly who I was. I could hear it in the way they said my name, soft like it stung their tongues. Clara Jennings. And I knew right then none of them wanted me there. Not his new wife, not my daughters, not a single soul in that room. But I didn't come for them, I came for me. Because no matter what happened in the end, Richard Calloway had been a part of my life for 25 years, a big part, and I needed to see it through. I sat in the back, didn't speak, didn't cry, just listened. And then when the lawyer stood up with that folder in his hands, he said a name that made the whole room go quiet. Mine, and suddenly all those whispers turned into silence. Tell me something. If you were me that day, would you have walked in? Would you have stayed? Let me know in the comments. And if this story already has you thinking, stick around, it's only just beginning. My name is Clara Jennings. I'm 62 years old. And for a long time, I was just someone's wife, someone's mother, someone people forgot about. I met Richard when I was 28. Back then, I was painting out of a tiny studio behind an old bookstore in Savannah. He came in one day to buy a gift for a client and somehow left with a painting in my number. He was charming, wore a blazer, even in the heat, always had something clever to say. He made me laugh in a way I hadn't in years. We fell fast, married within a year. Nothing big, just a spring afternoon, cheap wine store-bought cake, and two people who thought love was enough. I moved with him to Charleston, and we started a life together. He built a financial consulting firm from scratch. I stayed home and raised our daughters Megan and Lily. I painted sometimes mostly as gifts or for myself, when the house was quiet. And that was fine. I didn't need a spotlight. I liked being the quiet one, the steady one, the one who made things feel like home. Our house was filled with little pieces of life, finger paintings, baby teeth in tiny boxes, anniversary cards we never threw away. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. And for a long time, I thought we were solid. Not perfect, but real. Built on something that could last. He worked long hours. I kept things running. School drop-offs, bake sales, midnight fevers, burnt dinners. I thought that's what partnership looked like. He brought home the money I kept. Everything else from falling apart, I didn't see the cracks right away. Or maybe I did, but I looked past them. He stopped noticing things. New paintings. Fresh flowers me. But I told myself it was just a busy season. That love changes, matures. That silence doesn't always mean distance. We had history. We had the girls. We had enough. At least that's what I believed. And maybe that's the part that hurts the most now. How long I held on to that belief, even when everything else around me was already shifting. I didn't think I'd ever be the woman sitting in the back row of her ex-husband's funeral, while strangers whispered about her. But here I am. And if you're still listening, you'll understand soon why I showed up, why I stayed, and why that one moment when the lawyer read my name out loud changed everything. The first time I realized something had shifted between us, it wasn't some big argument, it was a joke. One of those small throwaway comments people laugh at in a crowded room, but it stayed with me. Long after the laughter died, it was at a gala downtown, a fancy thing for Richard's firm. He was getting an award, something about leadership and innovation. I wore a navy blue dress I hadn't touched in years. Fixed my hair the way he used to like it, soft curls. No fuss. I even wore the silver necklace he gave me on our 20th anniversary. I wanted to look not young, just like myself. When we got there, he slipped into the crowd right away, shaking hands, telling stories, being the man everyone loved to be around. I stood near the bar, smiling when people looked my way, nodding when someone mentioned how proud I must be. Then one of his colleagues came over, some big name from a partner firm. And Richard, without missing a beat, gestured toward me and said, "Oh, that's Clara. She keeps me sane." They all laughed. I laughed too. But inside, I felt something sink. He didn't say I was his wife, not even the love of my life or the woman behind it all. Just someone who kept him from going crazy. Like a plant or a white noise machine. That night, he gave a long speech, thanked his team, his mentors, his late father. He never mentioned me. Not once. On the drive home, I asked him gently, "Did you mean what you said tonight? About me just keeping you sane?" He didn't even look up, kept scrolling through messages on his phone. "It was a joke, Clara. Don't be so sensitive." That word, sensitive, it started following me everywhere after that. Anytime I brought up how I felt, how I noticed the space growing between us, how I missed him, I was being too sensitive. So I stopped bringing things up, stopped asking where he was late at night, stopped hoping he'd ask about my paintings or notice when I wore a new dress. And still, I didn't think he was cheating. Not then, I just thought we were going through something, a dry season, a busy patch. That's what I told myself. Then came our 30th anniversary. I made his favorite dinner, lemon herb chicken, roasted carrots, garlic mashed potatoes, lit candles, opened a bottle of red. I even put on that same blue dress, sat at the table waiting. He never showed, no call, no text, just silence. I waited until midnight, blew out the candles one by one, sat in the dark with cold food and a hot ache in my chest. The next morning, he walked in like nothing happened, same clothes as the day before. No apology, just, "Didn't you get my message?" Dinner ran long. I crashed at the hotel. There was no message. He didn't even check to see if I believed him, because by then he didn't care if I did. That's when I stopped trying. Not out of anger, out of exhaustion, I stopped making his coffee. Stopped waiting at the window, stopped pretending that love could survive on one person's effort. But the worst part wasn't losing him. It was watching the girls drift too. Megan and Lily used to be my shadow. We baked together, read together, shared secrets. But now they clung to him. Maybe because he bought them new phones, took them on ski trips, made them feel important. I was the one reminding them to eat vegetables. To finish their homework, I was the one who always said no, and he was the fun one. They didn't see how he treated me, didn't hear how he dismissed me when no one else was listening. To them, I was just moody, overly emotional, always tired, and maybe I was. Because I was holding up a house that had already fallen apart. Then came Jenna's engagement brunch. I planned it from start to finish, decorated the backyard, cooked all the food, set the table with cloth napkins and fresh flowers. Richard showed up late, shaved, smiling, acting like everything was fine, like he hadn't missed every dinner that month. And I let him because it wasn't about us, it was for Jenna. Then after the toast, after Daniel, Jenna's fiancé, thanked us for hosting, Richard raised his glass and said, "Well, if Jenna turns out half as smart as her mother and hopefully twice as sane, I'll consider that a win." Laughter, not loud, but loud enough. Even Monica laughed. Yes, Monica. The woman who used to be just a coworker, the one wearing my lipstick shade standing behind him with a mimosa. That was the moment, the line. The joke that broke me. I excused myself, went upstairs, looked at myself in the mirror. Lipstick faded, hair falling, eyes tired, and I didn't cry. I just felt cold, like something had snapped clean inside me. Later that night, I asked him why he said it. He shrugged. "It was a joke." "You're taking it too seriously." I slept in the guest room. He didn't ask why, didn't check on me. And that's when I knew he was already gone, just not officially. It didn't end with shouting, no broken plates, no screaming matches. Just a quiet afternoon. Ordinary in every way. I was folding laundry, his shirts mostly, the ones I still pressed even when he barely noticed. He walked in calm as ever, looked at me and said, "I think we should take some space." I remember holding one of his dress shirts mid-fold, still warm from the dryer, still smelling faintly of the cologne I used to like. Space. That's what he said. Not divorce, not separation, just space. Like I was clutter in a room he needed to clear. I asked, "You want me to move out?" He shrugged. "It doesn't have to be dramatic. We've just grown apart, Clara. We've been living separate lives for a while now. Separate lives." He said it like it was a scheduling issue, like we'd accidentally booked different calendars for the last 10 years. He didn't say there was someone else, but I already knew. Didn't need proof. I'd smelled her perfume on his jacket. Vanilla and cheap regret. He didn't even offer to help me pack. The girls were both out. Megan had moved in with Daniel, and Lily was away at college. No witnesses, no audience, just me, a laundry basket, and the echo of a life that no longer had space for me. And I didn't argue, didn't scream, didn't fall to the floor like in the movies. I just nodded, said, "Okay," and that was it. I think part of me had already left long before he spoke those words. Not physically, but emotionally there was nothing left to salvage. Only silence and a woman who no longer recognized the home she helped build. Over the next few days, I packed my things slowly, carefully. Not because I had so much to take, but because I refused to leave in chaos. I boxed up my old paint supplies, a few framed photos of the girls, when they were small, my mother's cookbook, and one chipped mug I'd always liked. I left behind the wedding album, the anniversary gifts, the crystal bowls we never used, the fancy cookware for holidays that never happened. I moved into a small condo in Savannah, old carpet peeling wallpaper, 2 rooms and a radiator that clicked like it was trying to speak. It was nothing like our old house in Charleston, but for the first time in a long while, the silence felt clean, not heavy. It didn't accuse, didn't judge. It just was. I didn't tell many people what had happened, not because I was ashamed, but because most of them hadn't noticed I was disappearing anyway. Let them think I left on a whim. Let them say I was too sensitive, too cold, too complicated. I didn't care because I knew the truth. I didn't walk away because I was weak. I walked away because I had been strong for far too long and no one noticed. Some nights I'd lie on that thrifted couch staring at the ceiling, wondering if those 30 years had meant anything. If he ever really saw me. If I'd wasted my best years loving a man who had already made up his mind to forget me. But slowly in that tiny condo with bad lighting and better peace, something began to shift. Not joy, not yet, but space, room to breathe. Room to feel, room to remember that, before I was a wife, before I was a mother, I was Clara. A woman who painted, who laughed, who believed in good things. And that right there was the turning point. Not the day he asked me to leave, not the day I signed the lease, but the quiet realization sitting alone on a worn sofa that I was still here, still me, and I wasn't finished yet. I didn't set out to get revenge. There was no dramatic plan scribbled in a journal. I didn't fantasize about getting even. I just started living again. Bit by bit, at first it was simple. I started waking up earlier. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to feel the morning stillness. I'd open the window and let the breeze in, listen to birdsong, feel the day settle into place before anyone asked anything of me. And for the first time in years, the quiet didn't feel like punishment. It felt clean, like peace. I took a part-time job at a dental clinic receptionist work, answering phones, managing appointments. The pay wasn't much, but the routine helped. The women there were kind, but I didn't make friends, not yet. I was still trying to remember who I was before I spent decades being someone else's wife. Then one Tuesday afternoon, while sorting through boxes in the condo's storage closet, I found an old cardboard box labeled Clara in handwriting. I recognized my brother Ray had passed away the year before heart attack. The only one who really checked on me during the divorce inside were old tools, a few flannel shirts, and one yellow envelope bent at the corners. My name written across it. It said Clara, read when you're ready. I sat down, my heart was pounding. Inside was a short letter from Ray, and beneath it a folded sheet of paper, older worn. Ray wrote, "I found this while clearing out Richard's office after the divorce. Didn't know when to give it to you. You were so broken back then, but this isn't mine to keep. You deserve the truth." The other letter was from Richard, his handwriting. No date, no envelope. Just words he never had the courage to send Clara. If you're reading this, it means I never found the strength to say it. I didn't leave you because I stopped loving you. I left because I hated the man I'd become. And you reminded me of who I used to be. You never asked for anything yet. I made you carry everything. You gave me a home, 2 beautiful daughters, a life I didn't deserve. And I repaid you with silence, absence, shame. Tina didn't save me. She just didn't know me well enough to see how far I'd fallen. You did, and that terrified me. I read it again, and again. My hands shaking, but I didn't cry right away. I just looked out the window, watched the wind stir the branches. He knew all along. He knew. He saw what he had done. He admitted it. Not to my face, but on paper. That letter didn't fix everything. Didn't undo the years. But for the first time, I stopped questioning whether I'd imagined it all. I wasn't invisible, I wasn't crazy, and I wasn't the one who failed. I framed the letter, put it on a bookshelf. Not to honor Richard, but to mark the place where my story began to shift. Then I started writing again. Journals. Long rambling entries about childhood marriage, my girls, the tiny joys I'd once cherished and forgotten. I let my hair go silver. Stopped coloring it. Stopped chasing youth in a salon chair for a man now buried in the same suit he wore when he first asked me out. I went back to the community center, started teaching a watercolor class for women over 50. Not many came, sometimes 10, sometimes 2. But each one brought her own story. We painted, we laughed. Sometimes we cried, and I started to remember what it felt like to be seen. Not as someone's wife or mother, but just me. One morning, I got coffee with Dean Holloway, an old friend of Ray's, a retired estate lawyer. We got to talking, and when I mentioned the letter from Richard, Dean paused. Then he pulled out a folder. Did you know, he said, Richard created a trust in your name 6 months before he died? Through a quiet legal entity, very few people would have noticed. He slid the documents across the table. There it was. Black and white, stamped, notarized, filed. The Charleston house, ours, was deeded back to me. And more than that, a fund named in my honor for women over 50. Pursuing creative work, I just sat there stunned. Not because of the money, but because of what it meant. He saw me. He didn't say it when I needed to hear it, but he left it behind. Dean said, I think this was his version of making it right. Quiet, late, but real. And maybe that was enough, not to forgive, but to finally breathe. I didn't tell the girls. Not yet. I didn't post online. Didn't call anyone from Charleston. Didn't even tell the women in my painting class. Because it wasn't about being seen anymore. It was about knowing who I was, what I had survived, and what I was quietly, slowly reclaiming. I didn't expect anything dramatic at the will reading. No fireworks, no grand gestures. Honestly, I didn't even expect to be acknowledged. It was held in a plain conference room at the law office. Beige carpet, stiff leather chairs smelled like lemon cleaner and old paper. Nothing like the rooms where we used to gather as a family. When I walked in, no one stood, no one smiled. Tina sat at the head of the table, lips pressed into a hard line. Jenna scrolled through her phone without really looking at it. Harper glanced up, then quickly looked away. I took a seat near the end, sat quietly, placed my purse beside me, and folded my hands. My breath was steady, my back straight. I didn't come for them, I came for the truth. The attorney Thomas Greer entered holding a thick folder. Good afternoon, he said, nodding to the room. Thank you all for coming. This is the final reading of Martin Devlin's last will and testament. He read through the formalities, legal clauses, statements of sound mind, revocation of prior wills. The room fidgeted. Tina's foot tapped. Jenna crossed and uncrossed her legs. Harper stared at her hands. Then came the shift. Thomas said, in accordance with the decedent's final amendment, dated June 17th. The following assets are to be distributed. Everyone leaned forward. To Miss Clara Markham. My name landed in the room like thunder, the property located at 1826. Waxford Lane, Charleston, South Carolina. All liens cleared, paid in full by the decedent prior to passing. There was a beat of silence, then gasps. Real ones. Jenna's eyes widened. Harper's jaw went slack. Tina didn't move, but her knuckles turned white around the arms of her chair. Thomas continued, additionally to Ms. Markham. The Martin Devlin Creative Arts Fund, established to support underrepresented women over the age of 50 in pursuit of creative careers. To be managed in her name, value $480,000, non-transferable. Not subject to contest, Tina finally spoke. There must be a mistake. Thomas didn't blink. All documents were reviewed and notarized, filed with the probate court. Validated by the decedent's physician, silence fell, thick final. No one looked at me, no one dared. Then Thomas said, there is one final item. A personal statement left by Mr. Devlin. With your permission, I'll read it aloud. No one objected. He unfolded a single page, and the voice of the man who'd spent a lifetime erasing me filled the room. If you're hearing this, it means I'm gone. And if Clara's in the room, it means she's stronger than I ever gave her credit for. Though I always knew it. To those surprised by what I've done, understand this. I made choices. I regret. I left behind someone who built me, believed in me, before I believed in myself. Tina, thank you for being there in my final years. But you came into my life after the foundation had already been laid. Jenna Harper. Your mother gave up more than either of you will likely ever understand. If you're angry today, sit with that anger. Then look at her, really look. She deserves everything I couldn't give her when it mattered. Thomas folded the letter. No one spoke. Not even a breath. I looked at my daughters. Jenna sat frozen, her world shifting under her feet. Harper looked down, tears in her eyes. I didn't cry, didn't gloat. I said one thing. I didn't come to take anything. I came to finish what was left unfinished. Tina stood up, grabbed her bag. Her heels clicked across the room like retreating gunfire. Jenna followed after a moment, confused, shaken. Harper stayed. She finally met my eyes and gave me the smallest nod. That was all. But it meant everything. I thanked. Thomas stood and walked out. I wasn't shaking, I wasn't uncertain, because the story had finally been told. Not by me, but by the man who once tried to silence me. I thought that moment would be the end of it. Closure. A clean chapter. But life rarely gives you clean. A week later, I returned to the Charleston house, for the first time in over a decade. The key turned easily. Inside, the walls were painted different colors. Furniture changed. But the bones, the molding we painted, the scuffs from Harper's rollerblades still whispered of who we once were. On the mantel was a photo of Richard and Tina framed in silver. I took it down, not out of spite, but because it no longer belonged there. That house was mine again. Not as a prize, not as payback, but because I had built it, lost it, and reclaimed it on my own terms. The next morning, Dean called. His voice was serious. You might want to sit down, he said. Tina filed an emergency petition trying to block the transfer of the trust. I laughed softly. Of course she did. It was denied. He added less than 24 hours. Court cited full documentation, verified signatures, and mental clarity of the decedent. Her case was dismissed outright. But that wasn't the real surprise. During the review, Dean continued. They found something else, a hidden account. Actually, several. Richard had secretly opened investment portfolios years ago. Assets he never disclosed during the divorce. They were meant for the girls, but legally, they were mine. Estimated value, $13 million. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I just stared at the phone and said, okay, because I had already lived through worse. This wasn't revenge. This was repair. I asked that a portion of the funds be used for scholarships under Ray's name. Quietly, no press release, no dinner in my honor. The rest I kept. Not to look back, but to build forward. The Charleston house was quiet now. Not empty, just still. The kind of stillness that doesn't ache anymore. The kind that invites breath. The kind you earn. I had repainted the walls. Soft sage green in the reading room. Muted blue in the kitchen. Colors that felt like me. I filled the shelves with books I loved, not ones I kept out of obligation. Hung up my own paintings, even the messy ones. Especially the messy ones. The photo of Martin and Tina gone. In its place, a snapshot of Ray holding up a fish he insisted was at least 14 inches. He was beaming, eyes squinting from the sun. That was the kind of honesty I wanted around me now. The letter from Martin, the one Ray had kept for me, sat framed on the bookshelf, not as a monument, not as a trophy, but as a reminder I wasn't crazy. I hadn't imagined it. It hadn't been all my fault. And most importantly, I had survived it. I used some of the funds from the hidden portfolio to start a scholarship, the Ray Markham Grant for Creative Women. Over 50. First time, I read the acceptance letter from our first recipient. I cried, not from grief, from pride. Ray would have rolled his eyes and said, too sentimental, but I know he would have been proud too. I didn't throw big launch parties, didn't post on social media, didn't call up old neighbors to let them know where I landed. Instead, I got back to teaching. Every Wednesday, the same sunlit room at the community center, watercolor for women who needed a safe place to remember who they were before life asked them to be everything for everyone else. They came with grief, with questions, with tired hands and hopeful hearts. And we painted sometimes 10 women showed up, sometimes only 2. Didn't matter, each of them brought a story. And every time a brush hit paper, it felt like a step back towards something real. One afternoon, Harper joined us. She didn't say much at first, just watched, smiled. Later, she painted a small canvas of the Charleston garden, the hydrangeas I planted years ago. She remembered, we didn't talk about Tina. We didn't talk about the will, we didn't need to. Her presence was enough, Jenna. She didn't call, not even once after the will reading, and that used to hurt, but not anymore. Some people take longer to rewrite the stories they've been told. Some never do, but that's not my burden to carry anymore. I'm not waiting for apologies that may never come, or relationships that only return when they want something. I don't chase peace, I build it. One brushstroke at a time, one cup of tea on a quiet porch morning, one deep breath in a room that now feels like mine. The Charleston house used to be a symbol of everything I'd lost. Now it's proof of what I reclaimed. I teach 3 classes a week. I garden again. The hydrangeas stubborn as ever but blooming. And some Sundays I just sit in the sunroom with the windows cracked open and a journal on my lap. Not to write for anyone else, just for me. To remember where I started. What I survived. Who I am now. Not a wife, not an ex. Not a whisper behind someone else's story, but Clara, just Clara. 62, silver-haired, paint-stained hands, heart intact, unbroken. Still becoming, I used to think healing would look like justice, like validation, like people realizing they were wrong about me. But healing looks like silence that doesn't scare you, like laughter that isn't forced, like the courage to be alone without being lonely. Healing looks like waking up and not needing anyone's permission to exist fully. And if you're listening right now, if you've ever been made to feel invisible or dismissed or replaced, just know this. You are not broken. You are not what they couldn't see. You are not the version of you they created to justify their guilt. You are whole, you are here, and your story isn't over, it's just beginning. What did you think of Clara's story? Have you ever had to rebuild from silence? Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you believe in Clara's strength. Vote number 3, if you're still on your own healing journey. Vote number 5. And don't forget to subscribe to EN True Tales for more stories like this, real, raw, and unforgettable every single day.